Hey guys, so I typically don't do a disclaimer in the beginning of my podcast. Typically, I usually just go straight and dive right in, but I have a disclaimer for this specific episode. The content discussed in this podcast is indeed for educational purposes only. We aim to provide accurate and respectful information regarding sex education and menstrual equity. However, the views expressed are those of the host and the guest and may not reflect the opinions of all listeners. We encourage open dialogue and respect for diverse perspectives. Listener discretion is advised, as some topics may be sensitive or triggering for some individuals. Feel free to modify it as needed. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Welcome back to Rakina's Rising Icons Success Stories. In this podcast, we dive into the minds of tomorrow's future leaders, discover their journeys to success, the challenges they've overcome, and their visions for the future. Each episode features candid conversations with rising stars in various fields, offering insight and inspiration for your own path. Don't forget to follow me on all my social medias at Rakina's Rising Icons Podcast. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. Today we have a special guest. I'm here with Annicha English, a passionate high school student who is making waves in advocacy. She focuses on important issues like period poverty, sex education, menstrual equality, and immigration law. Here's Annicha.
Hi, thank you for having me, Rakina.
Thank you for being here. I'm very excited for what we're going to talk about today. I guess to start off, you have on Instagram, Annicha has another page which is called
Your Girls Ain't Girl.
Yes, and it's all about advocacy kind of.
Yeah, so I'm still getting it off the ground. It's not quite consistent with my posting just because of all my schoolwork and stuff like that. But what it's focusing on is highlighting important issues that I do research on. It's also highlighting how you can get involved in your own community with advocacy. So I have a lot of resources pertaining to that, as well as getting to know sex ed. What is sex ed? Just kind of the topics that I'm interested in, I'm giving more resources for.
That's amazing, Annicha. I have some questions for you about what you do with your platform and stuff. So, Annicha, can you tell us what inspired you to start advocating for these issues like period poverty and menstrual equality? Equity?
No, that's all right. I think it really began when 2 years ago, our Girls Inc. affiliate, Girls Inc. of Washington County, had their annual fundraiser, Grapes for Girls, and they asked me to speak at it, speak about who I am as a person, how Girls Inc. shaped me, and I realized that storytelling is something that I'm really good at and that I like doing, and I realized that's a really important skill in advocacy, and I am a person who has a lot of strong opinions, and I get very passionate about things that I feel are unjust. And so I realized that advocacy is a place where I can merge both of those things that I find to be very important to me and that are pretty cool to do.
That's amazing, Annicha. My next question for you is, how do you approach researching a topic before you engage with authority figures?
Really, it begins with statistics, and it starts with finding just local information. So for example, with teen pregnancy, when I was doing my sex ed research, it started with what do the stats look like in Washington County, because when I'm looking at implementing better programs for sex ed in Washington County, I want to know what is happening here. I want to be able to give them the facts. I want to be able to give them all the information that they need to how do I say this? I want to be able to give them the resources that they need to not only hear me out, but also to see that there is an issue, because you can't just say there is an issue and not bring up evidence for that issue.
Because then it seems not credible. Yeah.
Exactly, and then it becomes really difficult for somebody to take you seriously.
Yeah.
And so the most important thing to me is making sure that these authorities know that this is an issue and it is something that is worth taking a look at. Yeah. And that really starts with just learning the localities, and that can be as broad as looking at the entire country's statistics, or it could be as small as just like I said, right here in Washington County.
Yeah. My next question for you is, Can you share a specific moment or experience that made you realize the importance of sex education?
I think it really began for me when I realized that there were a lot of teen moms here in Hagerstown.
Yes, there are.
I remember talking to my friend in health class, and she was like, "Oh, my friend is pregnant with twins." And I was like, "Oh, really?" Not because I
was like judging her. Yeah.
No, it was like I was shocked almost because I know that's something that we go over in our health classes all the time. Like, teen pregnancy is very common and stuff like that, but it didn't really connect for me that it's right here in our community that you could be sitting next to somebody who probably has a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old. You're sitting next to a parent. And I realized that even though Washington County does have resources, and a lot of them, I don't think that people are able to access them as easily as they should. And I think that that there needs to be a lot more change in the conversation around teen pregnancy, not necessarily shunning teen parents, but actually giving them the support that they need, because we see a lot of teen parents here in Hagerstown, they have support from their families, right? Yeah. But when they go out into society, then they're shunned, they're looked down upon, and obviously that's not okay, but I don't know how else to articulate it besides the fact, people are looked down upon because of responsibility.
Right, because I feel like teen pregnancy can go there's so many factors to how they got pregnant, how they got in the situation, why they did it. So it's immediately when you hear teen pregnancy, people think that this person's never going to graduate high school, they're never going to finish, they're going to have to drop out and then later get their GED, they're never going to be nothing in life because they decided to have a kid early. But that's not always the case, and that's why I feel at the same time, if you can prevent it, that is very helpful. But if it does happen, that shouldn't mean that that's now going to be your whole life. It's more just that one obstacle, but it can be turned into something better too, for your outcome.
Absolutely.
Looking ahead, what changes do you hope to see in the conversations around menstrual equity and sex education?
That is a good question. One idea that's been bouncing around in my mind, and I've kind of been discussing it with a few different organizations, is expanding the curriculum surrounding sex ed.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of misinformation that's going around about sex education in general. A lot of people perceive sex ed to be something that's indoctrinating children or corrupting their innocence, or even turning kids gay. That's not what sex education is about. Sex education is about educating kids on how to interact with people, how their body works, and how those two things are intertwined. So I have a little bit of a breakdown of this on my Instagram page, but a quick recap is in kindergarten through 4th, 5th grade-ish, oh my goodness, language, the sex ed curriculum looks like what is a good touch, what is a bad touch, what is a personal bubble.
Yeah, I on TikTok, I'll see mothers or father teach their son and daughter what's a good touch, because the schools don't implement that. So that would definitely be a good thing to add.
Oh, most definitely, because then you're teaching your kid about consent, you're teaching them about how to say no, which is an important boundary that a lot of adults even today don't have. And so when we're teaching kids that young, to teach them that they do have autonomy, they do have a voice that they can use, that makes them a much stronger adult in the future, because they're less easily manipulated.
Especially at a young age, because we were talking about in psychology how majority of sex offenders or pedophiles, they usually are a family member keen to the child, and that's easily manipulation because it's they don't know right from wrong, they trust them, so that definitely makes them less vulnerable when they're taught young.
Of course, that I feel that's such a larger issue that a lot of sex offenders are family members or people that you're supposed to trust. And so by teaching those kids that autonomy, they're able to say, even to people that they love and trust, hey, I'm not comfortable. And that's an important skill.
That is important.
And then also going back to that idea of people who know that child, like, I don't know if you've talked about it in your psychology class, but terms that parents use.
Yeah, or like they'll be like, this is a game, and like, let's play this game and stuff like that.
Exactly. So when we go to the 6th through like 8th-ish level, that's when they start learning about autonomy, then they start learning about reproduction, how those things work. So then we're also fortifying children with those that education so that they're able to know, this is how this happens, here's how this is kind of how things interact. And then when they get even older, 9th to 12th, then that's when we start talking about contraception and STIs, and then also dating violence, and also just abusive relationships in general, and how we can navigate those different things. So sex ed is like a gradual progression of understanding consent, boundaries, and how we interact with each other as humans. And I think that's an important thing that we should be teaching people, and it's an important thing for legislators to understand, so that we are not spreading misinformation about, we're not leaving kids susceptible to such dangerous situations.
Right. How do you think your peers can get involved in advocacy, or even if they don't have a lot of experience?
I think the most important thing to do when it comes to advocacy is to find a topic that you feel passionate about. If you feel passionate about AI, I'd say just do a bunch of research on AI and then start posting about it. If you feel really strongly about climate change, do a bunch of research on climate change and start posting about it. The most important thing for me is making sure that I'm sharing truthful information. So I'm always going to say research, but really it starts with passion. You have to do a topic that you're passionate about. So find it and then start speaking on it. And I say that, but it's been kind of difficult for me to speak on my issues, not because I'm afraid of them, but because it's very new for me to be putting my voice out there. Like, my advocacy journey literally started 2 years ago. So I'm very new to all this. I'm very new to having a public account and putting my voice out there a whole bunch. But I'm working on it, and even today, like, I put myself out there, like, talking to classmates that I usually don't talk to, and it was scary, but I'm still working through it, and that's something that I think is very important, working through the scary bits. I'm actually kind of envious of you. You're really out here, you're a public figure, and it's so cool to be sitting here with you today.
Oh, thank you, Annicha. With that, like, being, like, you starting your, like, advocacy journey, you're also in a place where you can get a lot of backlash, and, like, people are very opinionated, and that can lead to, like disagreements and conflict. So do you, like, have, like, tips or ways, like, to combat that, like, in terms of people who want to share their opinions with the world, but because we live in a world where, like, everyone's so, like, kind of judgmental in a way, or so easily to, like, diminish your ideas or beliefs, how can people, like, combat that?
That is a very good question. I think that my best advice for that is to treat others the way that you would want to be treated.
The golden rule.
Absolutely. So I'd respond to people the way that I want them to respond to me. I know that not everybody is going to share my views, but I'd rather them take a moment to listen to what I have to say and hear my points and what is the evidence to my points, and just take a moment, take it in, and then share their point, rather than some of the debates that I see online where they just keep talking over each other and talking over each other. It's not very effective, and it's very disrespectful, in my opinion, to be talking over each other and not even taking a moment to understand their process of thinking.
To actually, like, actively listen to what they're saying. You are a high school student, as I mentioned before. So how do you plan to balance your advocacy work with your responsibilities as a high school student?
So I have held a lot of officer positions in our clubs over this year, but as I'm coming into my senior year, I'm planning on taking a step back, and I will still be participating in my clubs a lot because I do love them. But I do think that my advocacy needs more focus, especially as we are moving into a time where where things are becoming a little more volatile.
Yeah.
And I think that there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed, and I think that they need more time to be focused upon, and I want to give the focus that it needs. So I'm definitely going to be taking a bit of a backseat when it comes to leadership rather than being at every single event, and I'm going to be putting more time into cultivating my online presence because I think that's where my voice will be the strongest. Because you don't really see that many town hall meetings anymore where people are actively able to come out and sit in an auditorium and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to be focusing a lot more on just sharing on social media.
So Annicha, what changes do you hope to see in your community as an advocate for menstrual equity?
For menstrual equity, I hope to see a lot more education because menstrual equity is not just about having access to pads, tampons, and other period products like period cups. It's also about the education behind it. So what is a period? How do you get your period? What does it mean when you have your period? Because what I found is that a lot across the US, girls are not being taught what a period is and how that affects their body and things like that. One other advocate that I sat on a panel with at the United Nations, she was sharing how she didn't learn what her period was or what that was like until 12th grade.
Really? Oh my
yes,
gosh.
until 12th grade.
And typically you get it 9 and not, so.
Yeah, between the ages of 9 and 11 is the average age. And I personally was shocked when she shared that because we live here in Washington County, and that's something that we touch upon in middle school. It's that's something that they're very vigilant about, educating us on that. But it's not the same across the board, and I think that it should be because a little girl getting her period at 9, and then there's also the stigma that comes around it. So her mom's might not want to talk to her about it, and it's it's just don't talk about it. Just here's a pad. Here's how you do it. It shouldn't be something that you're ashamed to talk about. It shouldn't be necessarily one of those things where you toss a book on your child's bed at 4 p.m. and then you shut the door behind you so that they have to learn it from a book. I feel like we need to open up the conversations more about menstruation and what that looks like, and so that we're breaking down these stigmas of it's dirty, of it's weird,
it's embarrassing.
Exactly, because it's a natural process.
It is, yeah.
At some point, you're going to know somebody who menstruates, or you're going to menstruate. And I think that more people need to understand that it's not something to be ashamed of. And that's something that I've even talked about with my sister, because she's going through that in her health class, and she's learning about what a period is, and we were talking about it, and I got to share I got to show her where I keep my pads and stuff like that, so she doesn't feel scared to come talk to me. And I think that's something that I'd like to see change around menstrual equity, is just the stigmas, and also how we approach conversations about it and how we educate, because the education system across the US, it differs heavily. Each state is able to curate their own curriculum, which is a great freedom. States getting to choose how they legislate and things like that. But I think that across the board we should be educating children on what menstruation is and why it's important.
Right.
And not just girls, not just boys, you know, everybody needs to be a part of the conversation.
Right.
Like, that was something that we also talked about on the UN panel, is why is it important for boys to learn about periods? Because they might have a wife in the future, they might have a daughter in the future, and even if they don't, they might have a female coworker. And so it's important for them to understand what it is, what it does, and how to support somebody while they're menstruating, because it can be a very difficult time, especially if you have very painful cramps.
Or mood swings, hormones, this goes on and on.
Like, to name the minimal symptoms, like, it can be a lot. So knowing that you have support from somebody, anybody, is really, really helpful to the mental health and also the physical health of that person.
I guess, like, also, like, the last thing is there anything, like, you want to, like, say to our viewers, like, specifically about your, like, platform, like anything you're working on currently or upcoming plans you have for your platform?
Well, I don't want to spoil too much. I am in communication with a few organizations about starting a new program for teen parents, but it's still in the works, so don't look out for it too soon, but I will give you updates when they come out. But the last thing that I do want to say is that advocacy is not just for extroverts. For me personally, I am very much an introvert. Like this, I'm very nervous right now. I don't know if y'all can hear it, but
you're doing amazing, by the way. So you don't sound nervous at all.
Thank you so much, because I feel nervous, I promise you. But yeah, advocacy is not just for extroverts. Put yourself out there. I know it is scary, because I feel scared right now. So youth getting involved in advocacy is so important, because we inherit the world. Once the older generations of right now, you know, our Congress members are gone, once our leaders, our authorities are gone, we are going to be sitting in those positions of power. So every time we speak up, every time we share our voice, what we're doing is we are effectively communicating the problems that we see for older generations to at least attempt to fix while they are in power, so that they can set up an easier world for us to inherit, so that we can help the younger generation that comes after us.
Keep that cycle moving.
Absolutely, because all we are doing is we are perpetuating a cycle of life where we are creating a better life for the people who come after us, and we are communicating to the people who came before us. And so I think it's very important for our Congress people, our governors, our administrators to be listening to us, because we are the ones who are seeing issues from a different perspective. The perspective of youth is so important, because even though we got here, a decade and a half ago, we're still seeing issues. Our perspectives aren't any less valid than any other adult. And I think that's something that adults don't necessarily see all the time, but we do have very important perspectives that they need to hear. So more youth do need to get involved in advocacy, because that's the only way that we can solve problems.
Well, thank you so much, Annicha, for being here. I hope your advocacy journey is really successful in the future. I hope you make a big change in our community and the world around us. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It was a little different than my typical ones, because this topic was a lot more serious, but I had a really good time and a really good conversation hearing out all your big plans for the future. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Rakina. It's been such a treat.
Thank you. Okay, guys, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.